You're about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
You're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. So Kevin Bacon, well known for Footloose and many other movies, Few Good Men, I could go on. He never really liked his name. He doesn't mind bacon, but he never really liked his name Kevin. So a lot of people, I guess, call him Kev. But he apparently is changing his name, and I actually kind of like this, what he's doing. I think it's kind of cool. I know a lot of people are making fun of him for this, but I actually don't mind it. He gets A for effort. But Kevin Bacon on Wednesdays is going to change his name to Kevin Beans. Now, I know people are like, why beans? Well, he has a farm and he loves animals. And he says Wednesdays are Bean Wednesdays. And so he is going to swap out meat for beans and swap out his name Bacon for Kevin Bean. It's not going to be anything done on his birth certificate or anything official, but he is doing this to promote more people eating beans. And I know a lot of you guys are going, oh my gosh, now everybody's going to fart. I'll tell you why. A lot of people avoid beans because they're worried about the gas. Beans are pretty healthy. The reason why, because people always ask, why do you fart with beans? They have oligosaccharides, and I believe there's an enzyme alpha. There's an enzyme we're lacking. Let me look that up to break some of it down easily. I think it's the alpha galactosidase. Sometimes we have to add that, but the alpha galactosidase helps break down some of the more complex carbs. When we don't break it down, then they stay more bulky. Well, as we know, bulky fiber and bulky sort of vegetables and foods can help make our stool pass. Our microbiome, our gut bacteria, actually like the oligosaccharides, so they eat it, process it, ferment it, then we make methane. And we've talked about the components of farts and gas, and we'll review that later if we need to. But apparently the microbiome likes it. So when they eat up the oligosaccharides, they make hydrogen and methane, carbon dioxide, other sorts of gases. And then that can make you more gassy. But if you have a regular, balanced vegetarian or vegan diet and you eat beans often, your microbiome doesn't get all excited, and there starts to be a little bit more of a, if you just all of a sudden eat a bunch of beans, you're going to have a lot of gas. But if you have incorporated it into your diet, your body can get used to it. Another thing, too, is you got to pre-soak the beans. One of my friends makes hummus really, really good, and I was afraid to eat the hummus because I'm like, hummus will make me fart more than I do. And he's like, you got to soak the beans. You got to soak the beans for days. So if you pre-soak your garbanzo beans or your red beans or your black beans, that helps. By the way, for those of you with diabetes, if you pre-soak your rice, my Filipino patients taught me to pre-soak the rice, wash off that extra carbohydrate layer. That could also decrease your glycemic load. So there's a lot of things you can do with your food preventatively. But going back to Kevin Bean, on Wednesdays, he's Kevin Bean, like today. Going back to that, is it really going to save a lot of animals' lives? If it goes viral and if people don't eat meat on Wednesday, it actually could. Reason why I like it is for those of us who are meat eaters that feel like we have to have meat, in multiple times a day, we really do need to go meatless on some days and incorporate more vegetables. I think that's really important. And learning how to adapt and do well with livestock, I think does prepare us a little bit better for the future. I'm blown away when I see, I'll go to a steakhouse or I'll go to a restaurant or whatever, and I see the food and I'm like, how many cows are there on this planet to be able to feed everybody in this restaurant? I mean, you're just seeing meat and meat and meat, and you always wonder. I mean, what happens if something happens to the livestock or a virus or something? I know I'm watching Dutton Ranch, so that was kind of interesting. Kevin Bacon isn't wrong about this. Deciding to swap out and choose a day when you, let's say, avoid carbs or avoid, for some people that works. I mean, I tell everybody, well, eat less. You don't have to have meat for every meal. At least one meal a day should be non-meat. For those of you that have a ham, steak, or sausage or bacon in the morning, hamburger at lunch, and then at dinner, meatloaf, you could mix it up a little bit. Or you could actually have a salad. And you could add little, if you really want pieces of cheese and things like that to the salad, if you really feel like you need something more to that. But for those of you going, Dahlia, I cannot eat vegetables. I cannot eat, beans. I cannot eat any of these things. I think Beano helps. Beano gives you enzymes and allows you to help break down. I have trouble. I used to never have issues with onions, but I have trouble now digesting onions. So if I use Beano, that seems to help. But it's interesting. If I eat onions a lot, then I don't need the Beano. No, not to go into too much detail, but my body gets used to it. Drink a lot of water, exercise. The gas is sometimes a sign that you're not in a rhythmic cycle of good bowel health. And so when you're constipated, you're like, well, I got to work today, so I'm not going to go to the bathroom until I come home tonight. That can mess you up. You need to be able to, go to the bathroom and do what you need to do. So good for Kevin Bacon. As I said, he's not a big fan of his first name. Yeah, he actually really likes his last name, but he has a farm. He's teaming up with Humane World for Animals, which was formerly called the Humane Society. So the Humane Society is now the Humane World for Animals. This is according to USA Today. Oh, no, I'm sorry, just today. And so Beans Day is his new campaign, encouraging people to swap out meat for beans. He says it can have an impact on animals' lives, the environment, and your pocketbook. And I have to admit, also for your health. I mean, he looks like he's in great shape, and, he's, pretty trim and thin. And so, if he's doing the bean thing, see, for me, like when I eat chili, I have my husband make the chili no beans. I just like the chunks of meat. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So a lot of my friends are Gen X, right? We were born between 1965 and 1980. I also have some baby boomer friends born before 1965 and some older millennial friends who were born after the 1980. And they've been kind of perplexed by this success that we have been seeing with socialist candidates. The Democratic Socialists of America has put Mamdani into power, Seattle's mayor, now Washington, D.C., city council member Janice Lewis George, also a proclaimed Democratic Socialist, has a huge lead in the primary to replace Mayor Muriel Bowser. I believe she is leading Kenyon McDuffie by, I think, about 16 points. And so, growing up, America's capitalistic, communism is bad, socialism doesn't work. We're not getting that same message, or we don't have that same sentiment. And you're actually having Americans go, yeah, socialism sounds pretty good to me. In fact, when Obama and Kathleen Sebelius and Nancy Pelosi were working on the Affordable Care Act, and critics were like, but we don't want socialized medicine. We don't want socialized medicine. But the way the Affordable Care Act is written, we're going to have major problems, not only decades from now, which we're seeing, but probably within weeks of it being passed. And people are like, but why? Why is socialized medicine bad? England's doing it. Israel's doing it. Other countries are doing it. Why is it bad? Canada's doing it. I'm like, well, it's bad because I see a lot of Canadians. They don't want to wait months for an MRI. They don't want to wait, months to see a primary care doctor. They want to see somebody right away. Well, look at now where we are in 2026. If you want to see a medical provider, what are you being told? It's months from now. If you want an MRI, it could take months. So our healthcare system, since the Affordable Care Act, is so flawed, with the exception of the pre-existing conditions getting covered, which is something I support, and physicals being covered. The average person, it's almost like they're in Canada or the UK. They can't get seen. Now, the difference, though, is if you walk into an ER, if you get you still can get some decent care. You could still get CAT scans. You could still get things done. In the UK, unfortunately, they're running out of money. They keep running out of money. And so from a healthcare standpoint, reason why we are going to really struggle if we go socialized is there's not enough money to do what people want. In a socialized system, can everybody get GLP-1s? Can everybody get expensive drugs? Probably not. And so the money ends up running out. And people always ask, why is socialism bad? Why is, let's go back to why people are asking for it. Why are we seeing so many cities, right, elect socialist mayors? Why? Well, if you look at them, many of them are younger, right? You want to get the vote out. You want to get to younger people. Yeah, there's a lot of baby boomers out there. Their vote's important too, but you have more Gen Zs, millennials, younger Gen Xs than you do older Gen Xs and baby boomers. So there's a lot more of the population. Plus, when you ask people, is there capitalism working for them? And they're like, well, it's not, because I don't have a job. I lost it to AI. Gas prices are still up. I can't afford a home. Why am I voting for capitalism? Now, let's try it. Why not? For poops and giggles, let's see what Mamdani can do. Let's see what Lewis George could do for D.C. Now, how is Mamdani doing? Do you have the free buses? Do you have the free child care? Is your rent dropping? Not yet. Now, I know he's only been there, a year? Less than a year? No, he's been there 6 months. 6 months? Takes some time, but all we have are these trials with the free buses in the past. Apparently with the free buses, I forget if it was Kansas City, I forget which city trialed that. They said the problem with the free buses that they had was homeless people used them to stay warm. And so there were never any seats on them. So you couldn't really use them because homeless people were on them. And so the free buses, you ended up going and paying for transportation. Same thing with the government-run grocery stores. Government-run grocery stores, they said they never had enough food on the shelves. They didn't have enough choices. And in fact, I think the one in Kansas City ended up closing. So, and I know if it were, if more people on a grand scale worked, to try to figure out how to, deal with the challenges, these efforts might last longer. But it's the same thing that keeps happening. There's not enough funding. It sounds wonderful. Wow, free childcare. Free childcare. That's what a lot of mayors are now pushing for. We're going to have free childcare. And I got to tell you, childcare was expensive. I had to work, and I can't tell you how many moms, they go, look, I'm spending more on childcare than I'm making. I might as well just stay home with my kid. Why am I putting my kid in childcare and deal with the stress? But to do free childcare, all right, who is managing the teachers? Who is managing the care? Who is overseeing the facilities? Who's ensuring that everything is up to code? And when there's no staff, what do you do? If the government is running it, they're going to struggle. When somebody privately has a daycare, I mean, then they'll get their butt down there themselves. But if Mom Dami's daycare struggles to staff, or they keep having people call out, you have to have a certain ratio. I forget what the state laws are per infant or per child. There's a ratio. And if that ratio isn't satisfied, adult to a child, you have to close for the day. Are they going to do that? Who's going to ensure they're going to do that? Or is Mom Dami going to go, and you know what? I got it covered. I'll watch the kids today. So offering free childcare for millions of individuals is nice, but do you have enough licensed daycare technicians? Who's vetting them? How long is that going to take to do? Now, somebody can say, but Dr. Dahlia, then let's do that. Let's work to do that. We have, 73 million kids? 65 million kids? Not all of them need daycare. Let's say 10 million kids need daycare. All right, let's hire the people in the private daycare institutions. How quickly are you going to do that? And then what is that going to cost the taxpayer? I mean, you want to do government-run grocery stores. You want to do free buses. You want to have rent caps. You want to increase pay for workers. These are all really nice and attractive. This is why Americans are voting for it. They're like, what do I have to lose? Why not? I'm not, seeing where my tax dollars are going now, and I'm paying enough taxes, so, why not? But then things get costlier. Apparently, California's passing a bill, which it's shocking that they have to pass a bill for this, but apparently a lot of landlords do not have a stove or a refrigerator in the unit. And so if you are renting an apartment, you to rent an apartment with no stove or refrigerator screws over the tenant. So there's a law now in California where you have to have a working refrigerator, working stove. I'm amazed that there were landlords trying to, get away with that. But now the landlords are going to be like, all right, well, then I'm going to charge more rent. Although if I was looking for a place to live, I would say up yours if there's no refrigerator or stove or bathroom or whatever. So people are very, very attracted to the younger, Louis George, when she speaks, she's dynamic. And apparently we're being told that they're they know how to train that next generation of politicians. They're not the old school, I'm going to say this and I'm going to wave my hands and I'm going to I mean, Bill Clinton was one of the ones to fight the welfare state, where he, had, I think, wanted to institute work requirements and things like that to make sure, people were not taking advantage of the system. If I could find it correctly, find it. And so when you are going to be offering everything and saying, we're going to cover for all this, who's overseeing? Who's making sure there's no fraud? Who's making sure these daycare centers are actually legitimate daycare centers? So before you do that, you need to prove to us you have the infrastructure in place, because it's going to take the other half of the country's tax dollars to make this work. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Hi, everyone. Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis here from Legal Help Center. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up, because we have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. You can find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. The call is free, the consultation is free, and you can speak with a live agent right now. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident of any kind, call now to find out if you have a case and how much you could potentially get.
Thanks, Vernon. You heard it, folks. If you've been injured, call and find out how much you qualify for. Call 800-679-0800. That's 800-679-0800. 800-679-0800. Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states. Not available in California.
And we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So Luigi Mangione, who is on trial for allegedly gunning down the CEO of United Healthcare, is now seeking a psychiatric defense. And apparently his team has filed an extreme emotional disturbance defense. Using a psychiatric defense is probably, grabbing at straws, but that's what the defense team is doing. So he appeared in the Manhattan Criminal Court today. Judge Gregory Caro unsealed his defense's team's motion to potentially seek a psychiatric defense on the basis of extreme emotional disturbance. This was for the shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. So they, according to the 250.101B notice that was unsealed, it refers to a, quote, notice of intent to proffer psychiatric evidence. They will obtain a psychiatric evaluation. The term psychiatric evidence, according to Rolling Stone, is defined legally in this case as, quote, evidence of mental disease or defect to be offered by the defendant in connection with the affirmative defense of lack of criminal responsibility by reason of mental disease or defect. They said apparently there are two types of psychiatric defenses: not guilty by reason of insanity, and then the one Mangione is claiming, which is extreme emotional disturbance. And I'm confused by that, because isn't everybody who chooses to kill somebody emotionally disturbed? But this extreme emotional disturbance is one that gets used, let's say a spouse catches their partner cheating and kills somebody in the heat of the moment. They say if this psychiatric defense holds, it would bring the murder charge down to manslaughter. Now, it does not mean that this is the way they're going to go, but they are not, I guess, allowed to, do it without notifying the court. Caro told his team that they were in danger of losing the option to use this defense if they didn't file all the appropriate paperwork. So the prosecution, still you're innocent until proven guilty, has to prove to the jury that what Mangione did was murder. And Mangione will have to, his team will have to, supply the proof that it wasn't, murder one, it was extreme emotional disturbance. So the judge wants more information involving that. by today or no later than tomorrow if the lead defense counsel under Karen Friedman Agnifilo is apparently has delivered voluminous records, and I guess they dropped this on the district attorney relatively recently. He's right now, Mangione is under federal custody in Brooklyn. People are raising money for his defense. People look at Mangione as a hero going after a healthcare CEO. Why would this even go? Well, they're claiming that his I think he had a spinal fusion surgery and some of his other medical issues caused him to have emotional and physical pain. And this put him in a fragile state and in emotional distress as it relates to healthcare. Now, I'm confused because every time somebody decides to kill somebody, they're probably emotionally disturbed. They probably have some sort of mental illness. Now, but what they want to claim, they want the jury to feel sorry for him and say, look, he was in pain. And when you're in pain, you'll do strange things. I would not randomly kill a father who is on his way to a conference in New York City if I was in pain. If I was in pain, I would probably go home, cry, try to, do whatever I could do to manage the pain. But I don't think I would go and actively try to kill somebody. And apparently Mangione looks like he had some physical abilities to him because he was able to hide, he was able to shoot point blank, he was able to run. And I think he was found in Altoona, miles away at a McDonald's. So he obviously has some physical abilities. The pain isn't preventing him from shooting somebody. So I don't know if that's going to go. He's facing charges in federal court and New York State court. He's pleaded not guilty to all the charges. 4 federal charges against him include 2 stalking charges, murder through the use of firearm, and a firearms offense. Remember, I think he had a 3D printer gun. That blows my mind that they could do that now. They say the murder through the use of a firearm charge could possibly come with the death penalty sentence. Mangione's defense argued that the stalking charges do not meet the legal requirements for a crime of violence. Really? If you stalked somebody in order to kill them, how is that stalking not, having a crush on somebody, and watching them from afar, a little creepy, but that's not what he did, allegedly. So the 2 stalking charges are part of his federal case. Mangione faces maximum penalty of life in prison without the possibility of parole. But like I said, he could get the death penalty for the murder charge. So the psychiatric, one thing about the courts is the insanity defense. I believe the one that stabbed Irina, the immigrant on the train, I believe he's I guess not psychiatrically sound and competent to hold trial, so they're going to do treatments first on him. Yeah, anybody who chooses to murder somebody obviously has psychiatric illness. And so it's interesting that now there's this emotional disturbance. See, pleading insanity is the way a lot of people went. Well, I'm going to plead insanity. You still get locked up, but then you go and, through mental rehabilitation and things like that. But, if you commit a crime based on mental insanity, you'll save yourself, from the death penalty, but you're still going to be incarcerated. It's just there's more wiggle room for you to then get out. It's a much lighter sentence. Well, I was temporarily insane, they could say, and then they go through psychiatric evaluation, and then later the psychiatrist is like, this person's good. This person's good. It was an act of insanity. I don't think they're going to do it again. So there's a lot more laxity with that. But this emotional disturbance, everybody could technically make a claim for that. And it's interesting how this is what happens with law. You would think things would be cut and dry. Somebody shoots somebody. They're caught on video. They have evidence. But with Luigi Mangione, it's been one thing after another. Apparently, I don't know if it was one of the female cops or one of the cops moved the backpack to a distance that was not close by. If the backpack was close to the person, they'd be able to search it, but because they moved it and then they searched it, that was illegal search. And so with these protocols, and I get they're there to protect us. You don't want somebody handing you a bag saying this is yours, but because it was moved away, you said, but you planted that. There's been some really, really bad characters in the past, so this is how we could protect, suspects. But on the other end, you're looking at somebody and they're going to be trying to grab every straw they can and manipulate whatever they can, just like what we saw with the track star murder and stabbing. They tried to say that that armory of the suspect was doing it all in self-defense. Someone approached. This is what lawyers do. They take a look at the situation and go, you know what we could do? We could use this. We could say this. We could say this. And it's frustrating because there's what happened, and then there's, well, what do we do to mitigate and, turn this around? And it's a shame because the reason why we have those applications and laws to protect somebody who is innocent, but they get manipulated for those who are guilty or presumed guilty. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Dahlia here. Thousands of physicians, residents, nurses, and medical students are silently dealing with depression. And tragically, 400 take their lives each year. 400! I wrote The Depressed Doctor, hoping to reach out to anyone struggling. You're not alone. Don't stay silent. The Depressed Doctor can be found on Amazon, or the book can be found on drdahlia.com. And if you or anyone you know needs help, call or text 988, the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline.
There's a lot going on right now, and broadcasters are on the ground covering all of it, bringing you the weather, the traffic, and breaking news, all while entertaining you 24 hours a day. Someone needs to tell you what's going on around the world and in our hometowns, and that someone is us. We are free radio. We are always there. We are broadcasters. Visit wearebroadcasters.com or text radio to 52886 to learn more. Furnished by NAB and this station.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So a little bit of drama on the Hanta virus front. Well, there was a woman who was exposed to Hanta virus on the MV Hondius cruise. Now, she's in federal quarantine, was going to be released early and allowed to monitor from home because she's currently in Nebraska. But we're being told by CNN that U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suggested she still finish out her federal quarantine. And Angela Perryman is one of 18 cruise passengers from the U.S. who were sent to the National Quarantine Unit at Nebraska Medical Center in early May for medical monitoring. She feels like she's in prison, and she thinks that the health system has used her as a prop and a political stunt. Now, I would not want to be quarantining. I like Nebraska, but I wouldn't want to have to stay there any longer than I need to. It's let me get home. But the quarantine period is up to 42 days. So if she's been there for 30, roughly, or unless, because I think actually, was it early May? Yeah, early May, so maybe 35. She should be coming up close to the 42 days. According to CNN, some passengers have been willing to stay voluntarily for the entire 42-day quarantine period, but most have left the facility to continue going at home. Passengers who departed were allowed to go if their state health departments agreed to take on the liability, conduct daily symptom monitoring by telehealth, continuous 24/7 oversight of each person through June 21. 10 have said thank you, but went back to their states, and the states are now taking over. Perryman wanted to leave by June 1, but I believe the quarantine would go all the way through June 21st. Her home state of Florida apparently did not agree to the federal government's monitoring requirements. Now, a couple days ago, Kennedy signed an order stating that the federal quarantine still remains in effect for her. She thinks it's an issue between the state and the feds. She's 47 years old, wants them to get their act together. So the initial federal quarantine period, I believe, was supposed to end for her May 31st, but then it was extended. Perryman requested a medical review of the extended quarantine order. This was led by Dr. Michael Bell. He's a quarantine medical reviewer with the CDC. Expert testimony was provided by Dr. Christopher Braden, acting director of the CDC for emerging and zoonotic infectious disease. Zoonotic is where you get a disease as a human from an animal. And then Dr. David Fitter, director of the agency's Division of Global Migration Health. In a report, Dr. Bell concluded that the federal quarantine order should be rescinded so she could go home for the remainder of the 42-day quarantine period, as long as the Florida Department of Health accepts responsibility for monitoring and promises to put her in hospital if a need arises. Now, why 42 days? Well, because the incubation period. If you get exposed to something, the incubation period is the time it takes from exposure to symptoms. And with hantavirus, that could be up to 8 weeks. So if the incubation period, ranges that long, we will usually quarantine and watch you or suggest that, yeah. So the federal government's requirement for continuous monitoring, Florida proposed once daily telehealth monitoring. Bell said that would meet the intent. Dr. Bell said that'd be fine. So there was testimony, but for some reason they say Kennedy disagreed. And he said, having considered the medical reviewer's findings and recommendation of the evidence in the administrative record, I find that the requirements for federal quarantine continue to be met. Continuation of the order is necessary to protect public health. Now, we don't know what he saw. According to CDC Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, Secretary Kennedy specifically considered the medical recommendation before deciding to continue the current order. In the absence of proper home monitoring by state authorities, the administration's quarantine order is necessary to ensure both Ms. Perryman and her community's well-being. And this is kind of interesting because, usually Florida, their state health department has their act together. I'm kind of confused why, the HHS and Florida's Department of Health is kind of at odds. So Perryman's upset. She's lost trust in the doctors, public health, too many rescinded promises, and she can't go home yet. Very confusing. Apparently there's appeals. She spent $4,000 to rent a house in Florida for a month so she could have a place to stay that was completely private, so she could do the quarantine period. So not exactly sure what they saw. Was it that she had an elevated... I mean, we don't have all it sounds like, what's going on here? If she's fine, why does she not... Other people get to go, but not her. Is it because something doesn't seem to be, shall we say, in place from a Florida standpoint? Or is it that there was something they found on her routine checks? But the point of all this is if you get exposed to something and the government thinks that you could be a threat to public health, that supersedes. This is why people keep asking, Dr. Dahlia, when are the court cases going to come with the COVID vaccine? And that gets a little tricky. I think there are court cases already in the works. But the problem is the courts will usually side with public health. And government takes liberties, which is what we saw them do in 2020. Take advantage of a situation under the auspice of health. And when Joe Biden said, don't worry, we're not going to have a show us your papers, we're not going to mandate the vaccine, he lied. Because then that happened. And didn't some people get kicked out of a Chick-fil-A in California because they didn't show proof of vaccination? Which made no sense to me, because even if you're vaccinated, you can still carry and transmit the virus. It doesn't make sense. So, I'm not sure what's going on in terms of this particular case. But if there's an infectious disease and you possibly get exposed, for those of you that forgot what happened with COVID, that was just a trial period for what the government could do. And I think the government liked that. Look at how it transformed elections. Our elections will never be the same because they use that as an excuse for mail-in ballots. They postponed the Tokyo Olympics because we weren't ready for COVID and we didn't have a tried and true process. But when it came to elections, you know what? Let's just mail everybody a ballot, throw it in the mail. It's all good. And now our elections will never be the same. Work is not going to be the same because people say, yeah, but I'm working at home. Are you really? I talked to friends who were laying out at the pool. And I go, what are you doing? Oh, I'm working on my tan. And I go, oh, you're off today? No, I'm on the clock. But they don't know. That has completely transformed that. Even though most employers are saying, no, you got to get back to work. But what happened with COVID taught us that without the scientific backing, the government can make decisions and nobody's going to block them because they claim it's because of public health. And when people ask, can we actually see the numbers? Is it who's dying truly from COVID or who is having heart attacks and pneumonia, but also coincidentally testing positive? Can we at least get some of that data? That data was not available. And then when people ask about the data with the vaccine, saying, look, I'm glad we have a vaccine, but I'd like to know more about side effects before I get it. The mandate was rolled out. And you never, in the midst of a public health crisis, threaten to pull funding from a hospital. But that's what Biden did. If a hospital didn't make sure all their workers vaccinated, so they lost a lot of workers. A lot of the workers quit. You really want to threaten workers in hospitals? Don't you want the hospitals funded? The last thing you want in a public health crisis, if it truly is a public health crisis, is to defund a hospital and cause them to close. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep you posted if we get more information. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by Financial Fitness Show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.